The party my grandfather shouldn't have attended. My grandfather was a bodyguard for a state governor back in the 1990s. Tough man, quiet, the kind who carried the weight of secrets without ever letting it show. One night, years ago, he told us a story he swore was true, but only once, and never again. He said it started with an invitation. A wealthy man, no name, just power, invited his security team to a private celebration. Nothing unusual at first, until they reached a certain stretch of road. There, each man was told to cover his eyes, no explanations, just orders. He said someone blindfolded him tightly, and from that moment on, the rest of the journey was a blur of bumps, silence, and turns. It felt long, too long. Eventually, the vehicle stopped. They were let out, still blindfolded. He remembered the feel of cold rails under his boots and the sound of old metal wheels. They were made to board a kind of mining cart, like something out of the 1800s. It rattled forward into darkness. A tunnel, maybe. A cave. When they arrived at the final location, the blindfolds were removed, and what he saw didn't make sense. There, hidden deep underground or in some forsaken forest, stood an enormous mansion, ornate, elegant, glowing from within like it was alive. The grounds buzzed with people dressed in fine clothes, laughing, drinking, feasting. Tables overflowed with food he'd never seen before. Lavish dishes, exotic meats, glittering desserts. Women moved through the crowd, tall, impossibly beautiful, wearing crimson gowns and masks. Everyone drank a thick red wine that shimmered darkly in the glass, almost too red, too thick. Then there were the others. Not all the guests were wearing masks. Some had faces that looked like reptiles, scaled, inhuman, blinking sideways. At first, he assumed they were elaborate disguises. But as the night wore on, as he looked closer, the truth began to set in. They weren't masks. They weren't human. He said a kind of quiet fear settled into the air, like everyone realized it at once, but no one dared to say a word. Their host, who had not joined in the revelry, smiled and urged them all to relax, to enjoy the night. No one gets invited to a party like this twice, he had said. You should feel lucky. Despite his fear, my grandfather admitted he had never tasted food like that in his life. But something felt wrong, very wrong. So he wrapped a small portion of it in his jacket, thinking he'd bring it home for my grandmother. Eventually, they were blindfolded again, escorted back through the cave, driven to their starting point. No names, no questions, just silence. He arrived home early in the morning, excited, even happy. He told my grandmother everything, every strange, surreal detail. Then he opened his jacket to show her the food he'd brought back. But there was no roast, no fine dessert, only snakes, frog legs, wriggling worms. He couldn't understand it. He said he could still taste the richness of the meat, the sweetness of the drink, but when he looked down, it was rot, decay, carrion. He never spoke of the party again. The Devil's Ravine. This story was passed down through generations in my family. My grandmother heard it from her mother, who heard it from the man who lived it. It took place around the 1920s in a quiet rural village where the only way to survive was to work the land. People grew what they could during the short growing season. For the rest of the year, they sold homemade liquor or took whatever odd work they could find. The man at the center of this story was poor, truly poor. He had a wife, several children, and not enough to feed them. He was desperate, the kind of desperate that makes a man say yes to anything. He began to notice something strange about his cousin. A year earlier, the man had been in the same miserable condition. But lately, he was different, dressed well, ate better, had money to spare. One night, the man pulled his cousin aside and asked, "Tell me, how did you turn things around?" His cousin hesitated, then said quietly, I know someone who lends money. No interest, no due dates. You pay it back when you can. Naturally, the man was suspicious. There must be a catch. There are conditions, his cousin said. You have to sign a contract in blood, and no matter what you see, no matter what happens, you must not say or pray the name of God. That should have been enough to make him walk away, but it wasn't. He said, "Please, take me. I need this." They agreed to meet the next night, just before midnight. The next evening, the man was ready, waiting. He met his cousin near the church. No moon, just cold wind and silence. "Follow me," the cousin said, "and remember what I told you." They walked downhill, out of town, away from the lights and safety. After about 15 minutes, the man realized they were heading toward an old ravine. He knew the trail well, or thought he did. But suddenly, the path vanished, and in its place, a wide, glowing road appeared. The dirt turned smooth. Lamps lined the sides, casting a soft golden light. The man stopped. "I've never seen this road before," he said. His cousin turned to him and said, "Don't speak, just follow." They walked until they reached a grand estate, massive gates, glowing windows, and a garden so perfect it felt fake. Music played from within. Wine glistened on trays carried by shadowy figures. His cousin knocked once, and a man answered. "Come in," he said. "The master has been expecting you." They were led to a long hallway and told to wait. Minutes passed. Then footsteps echoed. A large door creaked open, and he stepped through. A tall man, wearing an expensive black suit, but no shoes. Instead of feet, he had hooves, thick, hairy goat legs. His face was wrong, demonic, eyes like burning coals, and curling from his head, two great horns that scraped the doorway as he entered. The poor man stumbled back. His breath caught in his throat. "Oh my God, what is that?" he shouted, trembling, and in that instant, everything went black. Total darkness swallowed him whole. He couldn't see, couldn't hear. All around him were thorns, branches, and jagged sticks. Something tore at his skin as he stumbled blindly through the pitch black. Bleeding and afraid, he stretched out his arms, searching for anything solid. His hands finally brushed something, a post, or maybe a tree. He pulled a red ribbon from around his waist, an old habit, worn above his cotton trousers, and tied himself to the trunk. And there, shaking and exhausted, he fell asleep. When he awoke, birds were singing. Light filtered through the trees, and as the sun rose, he looked around and screamed. He was on the very edge of a ravine, tied to a thorn-covered tree, surrounded by bushes and brambles. No road, no mansion, no music, just wilderness. He clawed his way out of the brush, his arms and legs covered in cuts, and when he finally stumbled home, he dropped to his knees and thanked God for sparing his life. He never spoke to his cousin again, never asked what really happened, and from that day on, that cursed place became known by one name only, the Devil's Ravine. The man-dog in the hills. My name's Aaron. I work for a stone-crushing company out in a rural area. What I'm about to share happened not too long ago, and even now, I still don't fully believe it. It started when they assigned me to the supply site near a remote limestone quarry. The location is pretty isolated. Nothing but brush, trees, and an old hill where we extract stone. Some nights, a few of the guys and I would go out hunting. They were all locals, born and raised in that region. Real outdoorsmen. We'd usually head out after dark into the nearby woods, rifles in hand, hunting for wild boars, deer, rabbits, whatever we could track. One night, 4 of us went out. Each of us had our gear, rifles loaded, and camouflage on. One of the guys, Tyler, had even gifted us some military-style camo to help us blend into the terrain. The idea was to stay quiet, stay hidden, and bring back meat. As we walked along a trail cutting through the hills, we started talking about local legends, witches, skinwalkers, little goblin-like things. Creepy stuff. Tyler started telling us a story about a man who could shapeshift into a massive mountain cat. Said the thing had human eyes, and it would rip grown men to shreds and eat them. I laughed. I told him that sounded ridiculous. There were no big cats out here. At worst, we'd run into a stray coyote or a wild dog, a lion or a tiger. Come on. But they didn't laugh. They didn't even smile. The deeper we got into the woods, the quieter everything felt. Eventually, we spotted a group of deer moving through the brush. Tyler, who was leading the way, told us to spread out so we could flank the animals. He readied his rifle, took aim, and fired from about 70 yards out. He hit one. The deer bolted, wounded but not down. So we took off after it, running through branches and thorns, trying to cut it off. I was close behind Tyler, heart racing, still thinking about that creepy shapeshifter story he'd told. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to wish I had taken it more seriously. We tracked the wounded deer until we caught sight of it again, staggering, weak. But then, something else appeared. Out of nowhere, this huge figure leapt from the trees. Bigger than any dog, more like the size of a lion, and it grabbed the deer by the throat and yanked it off the ground like it weighed nothing. We froze. I barely got a clear look at it, but what I saw chilled me to my bones. It had rough, patchy fur, somewhere between brown and gray. Its eyes glowed red like burning coals. Its body was animalistic, on all fours, but its legs bent in strange, almost human ways. Its teeth were jagged, its jaw too wide, and the smell, like wet dog and dried blood mixed with rot. Only Tyler and I saw it up close. The others were too far behind to get a good look. Tyler grabbed my arm and shouted, "That's the man dog, the one they say lives in these hills." We ran. Fired a few shots behind us, but it didn't even flinch. It carried off the deer like it weighed nothing. A short while later, we found the deer's body, torn open and still warm. I told Tyler we should bring it back to camp, but he shook his head and said, "Don't touch it. That thing, it poisoned it. Marked it. You carve it up and something bad's gonna follow you home." That's when we heard the scream. One of our guys, Zach, yelling from deeper in the woods, "It's coming. That thing is coming this way." We ran toward his voice and found Zach and Ben completely panicked. Their faces were pale, almost gray, like they'd been drained of blood. They said a massive dog-like creature with human eyes had chased them, screaming in a voice that didn't sound real. Zach swore. The thing shouted, "Get out of here, or I'll tear you apart." We didn't argue. We ended the hunt right there, because it was obvious that we weren't the hunters that night. Back at the cabin, we tried to calm down. Zach, still shaking, confessed that he'd peed himself, even soiled his pants, while that thing chased them through the woods. And the worst part? It spoke. It screamed at them like a man, like it understood, like it wanted them to hear it. We still go out hunting sometimes. But now we take more lights and other weapons for our protection. We stay closer together, and we never talk about that trail without checking our backs first. The black shadow that followed my grandfather. My name is Charles. I'm from a quiet coastal town, and this story happened to my grandfather when he was a young man. I didn't hear it from him directly, my father told me. And the way he told it, I believe every word. My grandfather, George, was a hard drinker in his youth. He loved to party and often came home well after 2 or 3 in the morning. It became such a pattern that my grandmother would wait for him every night, standing outside on the balcony, worried sick. But here's where it gets strange. My father swore that every time Grandpa George came stumbling home, even from far off in the distance, you could see a black shadow walking beside him. It was always there, pacing alongside him as he approached the house. But when he reached the front gate, the shadow was gone. He always arrived muttering to himself, saying things like, "Go away, I told you to leave." He looked pale, almost ghost-like, and sometimes he'd burst into the house cursing on edge, like something was right behind him. My grandmother knew what it was. She said it was the devil, trying to claim him, following him home after those long, drunken nights. Whenever she saw him like that, she'd storm outside, cracking a whip across the ground or snapping an old cable, yelling as if trying to drive something away. She said it was to break the demon's grip, but it didn't always work. Deep red scratches would appear on my grandfather's back, deep enough to bleed. Sometimes his arms were covered in bruises, and he'd complain about being sore like he'd been in a fight he couldn't remember. And at night, through the foggy window, my grandmother said she often saw a black goat, tall, wrong-looking, exhaling smoke through its nose and mouth, just standing there in the dark, watching the house. It got worse. Grandpa George would wake up stiff, in pain, unable to move some mornings. But over time, this became routine, just another part of their lives. Eventually, the truth came out. My grandpa George had made a deal, a pact with the devil. My grandmother had suspected it. He suddenly had too much money, always tucked away in a box no one was allowed to touch. It didn't add up. And one night, she caught sight of that black goat creature again, standing by the fence like it owned the place. But this time, she'd had enough. She stepped outside with holy water in one hand and a blessed wooden cross in the other. She yelled at the thing, "You're not welcome here, leave this house." And the creature stood up on two legs, towering, monstrous, and it spoke. In a voice like gravel and smoke, it said, "I don't want you. I came for your husband. He made a deal, and now it's time to collect." My grandmother was frozen in place, too shocked to scream. From that night on, things got darker. Until one night, my grandfather burst through the door sobbing, covered in dirt and sweat. He said, "That monster tried to take me, and this time it nearly did." He told them how a flaming doorway opened beneath his feet. He could feel the fire licking his legs. He tried to pray, but couldn't remember a single word. His mind went blank. So he cried out, "God, forgive me. Please save me. I swear I'll change." And just like that, the fire vanished, the threshold sealed, and the thing disappeared. After that, George traveled with my grandmother to a small town where there was an old church. He confessed everything to a priest. The priest looked him in the eyes and said, "Leave it all behind. Walk away and never return." And that's what he did. He started going to church occasionally, and after that, the haunting stopped. No more shadows, no more goats, no more midnight bruises or burning scratches. But the nightmares stayed. He told my father he'd often wake up unable to breathe, dreaming that something dead and heavy was crawling on top of him. The dream followed him for years, right up until the day he died. At his funeral, something happened that no one could explain. As he lay in his casket, a black dove flew in and landed right on his chest. It stayed there, unmoving, silent, watching. When they carried his body to the cemetery, the dove followed. It perched near the grave until the final shovelful of dirt was thrown. And then it vanished, right in front of everyone's eyes. To this day, my grandmother swears that was the devil coming to collect what was his.